Hi, Bill Jones from Turntastic Wood Designs. I do quite a bit of segmented work, and I really enjoy that. But it takes a fair amount of precision. There's quite a bit of Euclidean geometry involved. So keeping that level of precision and keeping your wedges just perfect is a constant challenge. Any variations that you may have in your sled, any variations you may have in the angle of your saw, you have to constantly fuss with it to keep it just perfect. And it's a lot of work, and I do a lot of test pieces and wind up throwing a lot of those test pieces in the fire. So I found a new way. There's a guy on YouTube over at a site called Segmentology, and I'll leave a link in the description below to his channel. And his name is Jerry Bennett, and he came up with a way to deal with this to make it much, much easier to actually use the variations that you may have to your advantage using these things that he calls wedgies. And you can go ahead and insert your own joke here. And I'll show you how they work next. With this sled, everything has to be spot on perfect. This angle between the base of the sled and the blade has to be 90 degrees dead on. And in this case, I'm using 16 pieces for a ring. So this angle of the fence in relationship to the angle of the blade has to be dead on 22.5 degrees. And if it's off even just a little bit, as I mentioned, I'm using 16 pieces. So if you're off just a tiniest little bit, that amount that you're off is multiplied 32 times for a ring because you cut on each side. So getting this angle just exactly perfect takes a lot of time, a lot of fussing with it, a lot of messing with it, and it's really tough to do. They almost never get it exactly perfect, and you wind up with a gap in your ring. And there are ways to deal with that, but I'll show that in a moment. When I go to put my ring together, it turns out I did have my fence off just a little bit on this cut. So as you can see, there's a big gap in between two of the wedges, and that won't work. So you have to do all kind of adjusting and fussing to get it to go together right. Jerry Bennett's system actually compensates for any imperfections that you may have in the angle. It works a little different, the angle between the sled and the blade. It works a little different in that there's two fences, and the only really critical angle is the relationship between the two fences. And Jerry provides these little plastic, he calls them wedgies, things that are exact. So you set up your fences using that and get that relationship between those two fences at exactly 22.5 degrees. And the fact that you have two fences and cut them that way, it uses pairs. And what it actually does is it compensates for any imperfections that you have in the angle. So what you have to do to put it together, after you've got your fence made, I will go ahead and mark the top of the piece that I'm using and a stripe down one edge. Then when you cut first with one fence, then with the next fence. You do not flip the piece over the way you did with the other fence. You keep the relationship the same. And as you assemble the ring, you make sure every other piece has the edge stripe on the outside and every other piece has the edge stripe on the inside. And as you can see, it makes perfect rings with no gaps between the pieces, which makes it much nicer for creating these segmented pieces. I spend a lot less time fussing with the saw, a lot more time actually doing what I enjoy, and there's a lot less waste. So a big shout out and thank you to Jerry Bennett. Well, I hope this video has been helpful for you and maybe you learned something. Again, a big shout out to Jerry Bennett over at Segmentology, and I am going to put a description or a link to his channel in the description below. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There, if I can talk. And as always, thanks for watching.